Hello and welcome to the DTFF podcast. My name is Ash and I'm joined with two people. We've got Scott back from hiatus.
Hey there.
And we got Todd. So we're all back together again, which is nice. Scott's back for a little bit from doing some training down at the coast. But first up, we're going to chat about something that happened pretty cool down in Osoyoos with Todd, which we did share some photos of it. But Todd, what did you guys get up to the other practice?
Yeah, so we had our new rescue truck we put into service officially. So we did the official push-in, which is, of course, is a traditional based on back in the day with the horse and carriage and buggy. We would have to detach the horses and push the buggy into the fire hall, right, or the barn. So we did that as per tradition. So we had a mayor and some council members there and a whole bunch of family as well. So we pushed in and officially got our rescue truck going. But we also did 3 dedications. So this last little while here, we've had our rescue truck, our tender 191, and our brush truck, brush 191, as our 3 newest apparatus. So we did truck dedications. So basically, one was for my dad, based on 54 years of service to the fire department. So we got a commemorative sticker decal on the back of that truck. And then the other one for the tender is Chief Percy Bates, which was the first fire chief for Osoyoos. And then our rescue truck, we did retired Chief Paul Baylog. So he came there as well, and dedication with the memorial plaque, and not memorials, he's still alive, plaque on his truck, which it was really awesome to see him there and his son there. His son was on the fire department for many, many years as well. So he was absolutely tickle pink to see it. He was snooping around the truck and making sure he knows how everything works, and was making jokes that he could drive this thing any day now because his name's on the truck. So that was really cool to see. And we were able to have all the family members involved as well. So that was it was a very touching moment. It was really really thought out. And basically we just wanted to really, show the history and have a talking point of the fire department history, because the history of the fire service is huge, and each department has very deep rooted history to each their own. And once we moved into our new hall, we're working on more plaques and just making people aware of what that history in Osoyoos is. So this was part of it. So that's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, I think that's really, really cool. Seeing the photos that came up of that, with yours specifically, having, your family, your wife and kids there, photos of your sister was there, your mom was there, stuff like that. Really, really cool. Getting the entire family involved for such a cool, truck dedication is awesome. And you guys are like us with the newer hall. Ours now is getting pretty old and busted. I think it's still sweet, but like yours is brand new, and ours has got a few years of service on it. But when you move from a long-standing hall into something new, sure, it's all squeaky clean and nice and bright and everything looks great. But how do you take some of that tradition, some of the throwback memory of what came before us? So I think you guys are on a pretty cool thing there with the whole truck dedication thing to some of those firefighters that had major impact. Like your dad, like 54 years of service is insane. The first chief, a previous chief, like things like that is really, really cool. So yeah, that was awesome to see. Thanks a lot for sharing that with us and all of our listeners and followers. So
yeah, and going forward, our new apparatus that's coming in the future as well, we've got it kind of pre-dedicated as well. So our next engine that's going to be arriving next year is already pre-dedicated to one of our past chiefs, Walter Lemke, as well. So he was there, and he was made aware of it as well. So we'll invite him when that truck arrives. So it's pretty cool to see.
awesome. Yeah, really cool. So wanted to get on top of that and just kind of put that out there to start the podcast here tonight. Really, really cool. So congrats to everybody that was named there. Yeah, really cool event. So with Scott back, you were away for quite a while, but while you're away, you managed to race back to take a course over the weekend. You and Grant took a TFL course. So why don't you tell us about that and kind of how that all came to be and what all happened there?
Yeah. So what a TFL is, it's a task force leader. I think we've talked about it before. So on a wildfire call, the task force leader runs several apparatus, basically. It doesn't always have to be they're called a task force leader, but they could also run a strike team. So they could run similar or the same apparatus, but their nickname is a TFL. So this course is the first of two. So there's levels. There's first level TFL 1, which is what I just took, and that's kind of to do local task force stuff and possibly getting deployed out to the outer regions to go do some work out there. But mainly it's concentrating like locally to help run like big wildfires here. And then the number 2, the second one is you actually make the provincial list, and then they would call you to go do course deployments out anywhere basically in the province that needs help. Yeah, so it was a good course. First day, I think it was 2 days, 2 actually full days. Wasn't one of those courses where you get there at 10 and then you sit around for an hour and then you do nothing. And it was like, no, it was like, we're here, we get started. PowerPoint heavy, but the 2 instructors were seasoned BC Wildfire members. They also have structural protection stuff, so they had a lot of good stories, and it wasn't like, and it was like all relatable stuff. So a lot of a good experience. So the first day, it was all PowerPoint, but it was like really quite in-depth PowerPoint, some good videos, and those sorts of things. But it was a pretty good review of what we call the Engine Boss course. So Engine Boss is what we all have. Todd, you don't have Engine Boss, do you?
I know. So we're doing Engine Boss coming up here in April with you guys when you guys are hosting. Because we tried doing the Engine Boss, I guess the last one was spring or no, fall. It was just fall out in Grand Forks, but we had to reschedule. We had some conflicting things going on. But yeah, we haven't really been in the deployment position with our department. And with the Engine Boss stuff, like as long as we have a fire officer, it works. They're happy enough with it, but they do prefer Engine Boss, as you guys know. But that is up and coming for all of us.
So that's essentially what the first day was a big review, a huge review on what Engine Boss job is, because a task force leader runs the Engine Bosses. So as we talked about before, the Engine Boss is basically the captain on the truck. It's just another term they use for forestry guys, or for structural protection, I should say. Actually, it's structural defense. That's one thing. We always call it structural protection. It's actually structural defense, where structural protection is the sprinklers. Structural defense is what we do when we come in the apparatus. So it was a big review on that. A lot of review on tactics, on why we do what we do, and how it's changed over the years. In this program, it's still fairly new. I want to say it's the last 10 to 15 years where we've really been implementing this kind of cohesion between wildfire and structural protection, structural defense. So us being municipal or volunteers with engines and stuff, how we mix in with the BC wildfire guys. So we went through all the tactics, and just to go over those tactics real quick, so everyone's kind of clear. The main tactics, first one is they call it, this is working backwards. So check and go. So check and go is literally the fire is coming right at us. We don't have time to set up any defenses. We don't have time to set up sprinklers. We know we're about to start losing structures. There's really no good defense. And one of the precursors to a defendable position is you have to have a safety zone to be able to fall back to. So, you're out in the woods, no safety zone to fall back to, no good water supply, and you can't really defend the structures. So the first one's called a check and go. So basically you roll up the house, knock on all the doors as many as you can find, do a real quick, see if there's any civilians around, and gone. You're leaving. You don't do any fire smarting, don't move any furniture, nothing. You're literally checking for people and you're leaving. The next one is probably, I guess that would be a prep and go. So now you have a little bit more time, but it's a position where you're not going to be able to defend it. So you would give the command just you're going to go around the house. First of all, make sure no one's there. Secondly, you're going to kind of fire smart real quick. Any stuff that's simple to move. It kind of reminds me of that the fire we had a couple of years ago when Todd, you were helping us, and you looked up and you saw there was a mattress on the deck that has just started burning. That doesn't really fall into prep and go, but it's kind of idea, right? We would have found the mattress thrown out the deck and got out of there. In our case, we actually stayed and defended it, but that would be a prime example of something you would remove. You remove stuff, flammable stuff, immediately flammable. If there was a big wood pile or something, you're not going to have time to prep it. So you're just going to do your best. It might even be just check and go, just out of there. The next one is trying to think. I guess prep and defend would be our next option. So our next option is now we're gonna wait. We think we have enough water. We think we have enough resources, and we're gonna prep and defend this position. So we prep the position, move all the flammables. We do what's called jackpotting. So you jackpot the kind of all the main flammable stuff into a big pile, usually in the driveway or into the lawn, and you can throw a sprinkler on it. So that way, that's where all the external flammables are. And you literally just stay and you wait for the fire to come. And one of the big things one of the big reminders they kept reminding us is if we're not there to fight the firewall, we're there to fight the ember storm. So and like the fire itself is not actually the thing that's causing houses to burn. It's all the ember transfer. So that's really what we're there for. So we prep and defend when we hold there. And then if kind of that starts turning south on us, we would go to what we call a bump and run tactic. So a bump and run is really more what we did on the big fire we had here. Is it was constantly moving on us, so we stayed mobile. We defended the structures, but then what we do is we rack the hose real quick and move to the next section, defend that structure, move to the next section. So that was really close to what we would be doing anyways. A bump and run. It's generally our tactic for a lot of things around here. Either that or prep and defend.
I think actually thinking back of that fire in particular, I think there's definitely moments of the fire where some apparatus were doing the prep and defend, and then other ones were out doing that prep and go, and then as things progress, then we're back into that kind of bump and run procedures. Like it seemed like it kind of kept switching back on certain sections for a little while, anyways.
Yeah, and it really, and that's what I'm going to talk about later is how these plans, like you make these plans and they kind of change, right? Like anything else. So after bump and run, and this is one that it took us a bit to figure out because we have what's called anchor and hold. And kind of what we all thought at one point was anchor and hold, because anchor and hold means you're tied into a big water. So you're tied into a hydrant. And I always thought it was you're waiting for the fire to hit. So you're defending, you're waiting for the fire to hit, but it's actually you're tying in after maybe a structure starts getting involved or something or you're trying to prevent another structure from lighting up. So you're staying untied from the hydrant. So you're staying in that prep and defend position until a structure starts to burn. And then if it's in your plan and you have the capabilities to, that's when you anchor in to a hydrant. And then you start fighting the fire. So it actually makes a lot of sense because you're not anchoring in and spraying a bunch of water because we've kind of seen it on a few different fires we've been on when departments anchor in on the hydrants. You could run out of water. If something kicks off behind you, you might not be mobile enough to go fight it. So there's all these things that could happen. And then kind of that would go kind of hand in hand with fire front following. So basically the fire has come through, maybe lit some structures up. Maybe it's come through, but now you're going to kind of go just behind it, and you're going to fight what's left of the fires. Right? You're going to put out any embers around structures that aren't lost. You're going to put out structures that are involved because the fire's already passed through. You're just trying to make sure there's no transfer of fire. And then the last one is tactical patrolling. And tactical patrolling can fit in anywhere. We use it a lot. Like what we were talking, we use it now on structure fire. So structure fire, we kind of reverse engineer it. So structure fire in the summer. Or realistically, whenever the wildfire danger rating starts getting up there, we started adding a tactical patrol in because there's a lot of embers that are kicked up in the air and they're floating across the valley here. And we started getting a bush truck to come out and patrolling the outer couple blocks, make sure we have no other fire starts just from a structure fire. But looking at it the other way, now wildfires coming in, blowing lots of embers on top of us. I look at the fire we had at your town, Todd. You and I were doing some tactical patrols at night. We were kind of rolling around in the neighborhood because we had a bush. We were in the actually command vehicle, but we had some piss cans with us to help fight the amber transfers.
That's right.
So that was kind of our job that night. So those are realistically the tactics that we would use. I'll talk about the planning in a minute, but I don't know anything to add on that.
No, I think the only thing really to touch base on is, like Scott said, I think we were kind of looking at that anchor and hold a little bit differently. And even now, going back to the engine boss course up in Grand Forks, so kind of the last scenario on the second day for us was when everything kicks off, and that was a big deal. And like the entire first half of the day was all bump and run, your prep and go, prep and defends. But they didn't have us tie into a hydrant until the very last one. And looking back, the scenario was we were tasked to the end of this road, and one house was starting to catch on fire. So that's where they got us to tie into the hydrant. The big water came out, and we were actually going aggressively to stop the transfer from that structure going on to the next. So we were allowed to firefight the structure that was on fire from the outside of the structure. There was no going in because it was already venting through the roof or whatever it was. But because of those embers and the proximity of the neighboring houses, they wanted multiple apparatus on scene to stop that transfer from structure to structure. So even that is really clicking in the brain that makes a lot more sense.
And I think that was one of the things that we got confused with, because when our engine boss course, we anchor and held, we held on multiple hydrants along the street. We actually just launched water into the tree line. And I brought that up, and the instructor said, well, he goes, the reason why we do that is just because we don't want you to flood someone's actual house. Like, in training, we can't just randomly flood someone's house. And that's what we do if 5 deck guns for aimed at one house. So so he said, yeah, we try to make that more clear now that it's, the structure's on fire, we're hitting it with big water, basically. So that's kind of where that comes from. But yeah, those tactics are very important to know, because it's kind of common terms we use throughout the province now. And a lot of the world now, the Americans use it a lot now. So if we say we're doing like a prep and go, we all know what we're doing. We're not just like, I'm going to stay here and move some furniture and maybe leave eventually. Okay, what do we call that? Yeah, so we know the terms now, so we can say it as and it's really important as a task force leader, because you can just say that over the radio. You can just say, Engine 181, prep and go that house as you're driving by. Like, hold it this and that's really that leader's intent, that commander's intent. And they talked about that a lot. How we just, as a task force leader, you don't tell them how to do it. You just tell them what you want done, when you want it done. Why do we want it done, and what it should look like when we're done. So, whether it's the house burns down or not, we're going to try do this. If something changes, we're going to change our tactics and go to something else. So those common terms, that was really, we talked about that a lot.
I think, and going back, like we were saying, like, before forestry, like it's a fairly new concept, the past 10 years or so, when they've been using us for this type of stuff. So having that more knowledge on these common terminologies is just, we're getting better and better, especially the past few years, how our wildfire season has been a lot more violent. And it's, this last summer, there was mass calls for everybody to send as much as you can up the valley. So you're getting a lot of crews that traditionally aren't very comfortable with this or experienced with working in that forestry environment. So having that terminology very common, very simple, and just that commander's intent and understanding what it is huge. And I know you guys train that way, and it works really well. We're training that way, it works well, and I just hope everybody else starts picking up the same and continues on.
Yeah, they were saying that how over the last few years, just by us doing this, the wildfire guys are getting more comfortable with us around. So they're actually taking not more risk. They're taking they're doing a lot more controlled burns near us, because in the years past, if they controlled burned and we weren't around, controlled burn can go not controlled really quick. Wind shifts a little bit, and that next thing they're burning down houses when they didn't mean to. Now with us around, they can use us as a line of defense. So we can the sprinkler protection guys can come in, start setting up sprinklers. we can, if it's like a planned controlled ignition, in a day or two, we can really prep those front lines to hold. But if it's it's quick, like Ash always tells the story of the guy like, well, that's rank 5 as fuck. Like gets out of the truck and they start back burning right away. Well, I think part of that was the fact that we had an engine sitting there, and he was comfortable with back burning right away and burning off that material right near the house, right? So that probably saved that house. I mean, sure, we were there saving the house too, but I think by them burning off all that material, that's actually that really helped save the house. And then we just kind of do the kind of nitty gritty stuff of dealing with the ember storms and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think like one of the key things with BC Wildfire putting on more and more of these courses and getting that common terms out there, getting that knowledge base back out to all these local departments here. Like we're registered with BC Wildfire, so we register a couple pieces of equipment every single spring, and like we'll send our water tender or our brush truck or our engine. Likely not all three at once unless everything really kicks off locally, but we'll get a phone call or an email. It's generally going to be an email asking for a piece of equipment, and we'll eventually send something out. And the things that we send will be with a trained crew that understands those common terms, so everybody's on the same page. Well, if we flash back to last summer, well, there was no big formal request with all of the qualified people. We all got tones up and down the valley, and it was send anything you have, anybody that you have, because we're losing homes like left, right, and center. And it was an all hands on deck. So you start to run into some of the people that aren't familiarized with some of these forestry terms. So the more that they can put these courses on, the more that we can get bring that message back. And we've been pretty switched on to that for many years now. I know, Todd, you guys are the same. Where you guys might not be going out on deployment as frequently as say we are, but you guys are still buying into the process, and now you're getting engine bosses sent out, you're practicing the tactics. So that's catching on. So even for a group like yourself, where you might not be going out as frequently, you're still buying into it and you're getting yourself trained up to it. Hell, a lot of our smaller neighboring departments, they're small, but they bought right into it. And they've got a small group of people that they can sacrifice out to a brush truck or to an engine, and they're making money for their community off of this, right? Because BC Wildfire pays. It's not like you're out there for free either. So it's amazing opportunities that are coming down the pipe here, and it's only going to continue to grow, I think.
Well, then the experience you gain out in the outer areas, away from your home department, you can bring it back here, and then when stuff happens, you have these experienced members that can be like, no, this is probably a better way to fight it. This is a better way to do this type of attack. I mean, we've seen that already. We had a wildfire last year running behind our high school here, and you could see the members that have been on several deployments now. We're just kind of like, yeah, this is just nothing. We're gonna prep and defend. We're gonna do this. And we can say it over the radio, hey, bump and run. Do this, do that, and they, we're used to having helicopters fly over our heads now. We're used to all this stuff because it's just a common thing. We're used to forestry working with us. Understanding how they lay hose, how they work. Just all these things kind of work hand in hand now that we've done it several times throughout the region.
And also, like you mentioned, with gaining that experience when you get sent out on stuff, it really it settles people down. We had a fairly rookie crew on some of our trucks when we went up the valley to kind of the lake country area in West Kelowna last summer. And man, the ember storm that we were in and the amount of fire that was surrounding all the homes, a couple homes went up. That experience, their eyes were jacked. And then when we had our fire, it was like, oh, okay, it's a rank 3 grass fire. We can chill. They had time. So we always talked about that train. Hey, it's the ember storm. This is what we were getting. And everybody's like, oh yeah, okay, it's the ember storm. But they never really saw it until we went up there, and it's burning into your arm. I'm quickly trying to get my sleeves down my arm because I was just riding in the truck for the past 15 minutes, right? And yeah, it's something else to be in the middle of that shit show. So It's pretty amazing to see what people take away from that, and then just build that confidence for when we get our local event for us.
Yeah, so I guess back to the TFL. So one of the things, there's a few things we actually had to do as a TFL. So one of the things you do is you give your briefing every morning. You have to give your crew brief. So we all had to. We were divided into like 4 task force. So and at each task force table there was 4 members. So we would be running our own task force, but we're also like the task force leaders. So we had to brief the other teams. So me being the youngest at my table, I was the one that did the scribing, and then I was also the one that did the talking. So it was actually good. It was pretty good because I kind of got the most experience, I guess, out of the course, I'd say, because I got to do like the talking and the writing and that kind of stuff. So as much as like sometimes you don't want to be that person that does all this, like it has to be the spokesman, it actually really helps you. So I stood up, did a lot of the talking for the group, for my group. But it was good because I got a chance to do the briefing. So the briefing, they give us an IAP, a pre-made one that was actually, they're all real ones from out in the field. So, and it's an action plan. So we actually had to go through. I think we had like 10 or 15 minutes to go through as a task force and pick out kind of the important parts. And some important things are like, what's the weather going to be? What's the weather prediction for the day? What's material? What kind of material are we dealing with? Are we dealing with pine trees? Are we dealing with standing grass? When does crossover happen? What are the main kind of goals for the day? Are we prepping houses? Are we fighting the fire? Are we, all these, like, there's all these things we do. What are the radio comms? Basically, we're following the laces, the lookouts, where the lookout's going to be, some of the anchor points, communication wise, and we have to like know what channels we're always going to be on. And then we have the escape routes. So how are we getting out? Are they timed? All that kind of stuff. And then finally the safety zone. So we had to know all that. So in our briefing, we had to give that. That was our briefing. So that's what the briefing that every TFL gives in the morning before your crew goes out. So we got to do that. And then I think the biggest takeaway for the weekend was something called the PACE. So the PACE plan, which is it's a military thing. And I'd heard it before, but I didn't really know what it was. I heard, we're doing the PACE plan. It's like, okay, I don't understand what that means. It sounds slow because we're keeping the pace. But it's just an acronym like most things. So the acronym is your primary, alternate, your contingency, and your emergency. So, and when you first hear it, you're like, yeah, that sounds like, I always do that. Like, that's always my go-to is what we do. We always have a plan, but do we have an alternate plan? And if that fails, do we have a contingency plan? And if that doesn't work, what's our final, like, oh shit, we're out of here. So that's what we were kind of challenged to do. They give us these scenarios and we had to come up with a pace. So the primary plan is literally like, if everything went perfectly, what would you be doing? So there was this one scenario we did, we were defending the mill. So it was kind of the final scenario. We all had a section of this big fire to deal with. So our task force we were in charge of defending this mill, which is like the lifeblood of this property or this town. So that was all our only task. We didn't care about the forest, didn't care about anything else. Just we were defending the mill. So our primary objective, or our primary plan, was literally like we could ask for as many resources as we want, but they would say no to us if we got carried away. Like, hey, we want like 5 helicopters and a water bomber, and they no, you can have, like, realistically, you can have maybe 2 Type 1 engines. You can have a couple Type 6s. Type 6 engines are like bush trucks, like what we can have, like fast movers to fight for spot fires. Maybe you want a Type 3, which is a slower moving engine, but it has more water. Right? Sorry, slower moving than a WildLand truck, but it has some water on it. When you get into Type 1s and 2s, they carry SCBA on them, so they can actually fight structure fires. So you kind of want a Type 1 or a 2 kicking around, because if it gets into the structure, you're probably going to have to throw SCBA on and fight that structure fire. So you really kind of want to have at least one Type 1 or one Type 2 kicking around, and plus, obviously, it's going to have more water. So we got to choose what we get. They only gave us one SPU, so one sprinkler protection unit between all four of us. And it was a type 2, meaning it only had 6 pumps. So at one point during planning, I actually went to each table as though I was like driving around in my truck. And so I went to another task force. I said, hey, how many pumps do you guys actually need out of this trailer? And they're like, well, 1. Okay, perfect. So I think we ended up taking 2. They took 1. So we had that as a plan. So when we briefed everybody on it, we said, we went around, talked to everybody. This is our plan. So basically our primary plan was to lay out, to basically set up a prep and defend, because we found that the mill was defensible because it had a big safety zone. Because we had these aerial maps, so we could see there was an old log pile, but it had been basically milled, so there's basically a big open field. So there's more than enough room to park all our apparatus and to be well within the flame height, and we were able to defend it. So we were going to do prep and defend. So we were holding, and then the type 1 engines were going to basically do that. The type 6s were going to do kind of bump and run tactics, drive around. So the cool thing about this pace thing is you can have multiple plans going at once. You can have 2 primary plans. So one engine group could be doing couple engines in your task force could be doing one plan, and your type 6s could be doing another plan. So the type 6s were doing tactical patrols. Sorry, not prep, not bump and runs, tactical patrols. And then the type 1s were doing prep and defend. And then the alternate plan is, now what if things start going wrong? Like, what if your primary plan is starting to fail a little bit, but you don't want to it's not like an abandoned ship thing. It's not like we're changing the total plan. So it has to be close to what you're already doing. So our alternate plan was, if embers started falling inside the perimeter, the bush trucks would turn into bump and run. So they'd start doing bump and run tactics, hitting those little spot fires. And our engine would actually keep holding on the prep and defend. They continue to defend. So every section of this plan of the pace has to have a trigger point. So our trigger point to go into our alternate plans, because it could also be multiple plans, was if embers start falling inside the perimeter, this is our trigger point. Any questions so far? I don't know. That's good. So basically, the trigger point for our alternate plan was embers and small spot fires.
Actually, Scott, just a quick question. So on our past fires that we've had, some of our rookie or crew members in my truck, I teach them trigger points. I talk about trigger points and think, okay, well, what would be a good trigger point for our terrain, the fire, the activity, and what we're defending? Is that something that you guys are talking with some of your members in the truck crews as well, or is that just are you keeping that as the officer conversation?
I think lately we've been starting to talk about it more. I think our most recent fire, like the big one we had, there was really no time to set trigger points. I think everybody kind of knew. I know, Ash, you had a different trigger point for, and the issue is some people's trigger points are going to be, if you haven't pre-planned the trigger point, the captain might be like, well, my trigger point's this, and somebody less seasoned on wildfire might be like, oh, I want out of here right now, because my trigger point is I see smoke. So it's definitely good having that plan. And I think one thing that really got me is I used to think trigger points had to be almost like a line in the sand. Like the fire hits this tree line, that's our trigger point. And it could be that, but it could also be the wind speed picks up to the speed. Embers start landing in our perimeter like ours was. So trigger points could be anything that it just changes it could potentially a potential thing that is going to change your plan. So that's really what a trigger point is. It's just any of these things any of these little situations that can happen they're going to change things. And doesn't mean you run away or you withdraw or you retreat. It means that you could withdraw slightly and reassess. So that could be all your trigger is. Like, oh shit, like this hit now, what are we going to do? Okay, but if you have it as a pace, if you already plan this, even if you jot it down really quick on your back where your IAP is, there's no I wouldn't say you're going to panic, but there's right away, as soon as embers start landing in your perimeter, you're like, okay, this is part of the plan. It's not like an emergency. It's just, okay, we know this is probably going to happen. Like, you know embers are probably going to land in your perimeter. Okay, so our we're gonna just switch the plan to the alternate route, which is now bump and run with the fast movers, with this Type 6's fast movers, and your engines are gonna continue to prep and defend. And then from there, what happens is, so now now we did the P, the A, so now we get to contingency. So now what happens if we start losing our perimeter? So now the fire is getting bigger. Maybe our contingencies, we've now started losing structures. So we're not tied in, and this, because this mill was, it was on hydrant water, but it was on hydrant water inside of a, that was running off the power inside the mill. So we said, okay, our trigger point will be is if we start losing structures inside the perimeter of the mill, we're going to fall back. So our contingency, which is our C, we're going to fall back, cover the main mill, and cover the electrical building to continue with our hydrants. So and then we'll basically anchor and hold on that building and defend the structure from burning structures around it. And then the fast movers will continue to do bump and runs. And then finally, our emergency plan is, okay, whatever everything's going for shit, we've lost the main mill, we've lost our power, and we're starting to lose our exits, our escape routes. Emergency, we're gonna basically blow out to our safety zone. We're gonna hold there. We're gonna reassess, and then withdraw, and then basically once we figure out what's going on, we can push back in and do some flame following or whatever. So it's all in the plan. So there's no like panic. Like you're already basically planning for this. So there's no like, oh my God, we failed. No, it's like, this is in our plan. So this is why, if it's there, it's just the final last ditch emergency was in the plan. So doing that over and over again really helped. And by the end of it, I could actually make pretty quick plans. And it just, that pace really does help.
Yeah. I think being able to lay that out, and Todd, I'm not sure if your question was like, do you share those trigger points with just your like leadership group, or like how does that roll out? I know, like going back to some of these other scenarios, these calls, like when we went down, and our truck was helping you guys. Like we had a couple trigger points, so we weren't tied into hydrant supply, so we actually had a couple trigger points, which is when we were able to start flowing water. So I don't want to have anything flowing water until it gets to this point. I don't want anything until it gets to this point. And then we were going to pull ourselves out because we didn't have that safety water supply. And like we had like that last emergency plan that if we were in a defensive zone doing our job, blah, 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 and we got down to a quarter tank and we had no means of getting our water supply filled, we would drop lines and go. So, and I was sharing that with my crew. I went out and shared that with your chief, and he was basically like, yeah, no, you guys are set. Like, you guys do you, we're going to do us up here. And none of it really, came to fruition. And like Scott says, like when we were up on incoming fire, I had a pretty switched on crew of people on the ground. And as I've said in here before, my pump operator was very concerned, I would say. So when we got there, I would say his trigger point was likely reached already. And it progressed worse and worse and worse. Obviously, things got closer. And I mean, there was fire not surrounding us, but it was almost to the point where like the last hour emergency would have been if our exit was going to be impinged with fire. And we had no support at the bottom of the hill, which we did, which then made our emergency line a little less worrisome because there was support right at the bottom of our emergency route. So,
well, like you said, like we were even talking, like your primary plan could literally be cut and run. Like that could be your primary plan. Which some people have to be the emergency plan. But your primary plan could be like, hey, we're going to hold here to the last possible second and then get out of there. That's our primary plan. We know this fire is going to hit us hard, and our primary plan is literally going to get the hell out of here after it hits. So that might not even be your emergency plan. So there could be those options too. Like one person's emergency plan is another person's primary plan. And kind of going back to what you were saying, like the guy running the pump at the time, he was a seasoned guy, but he's seasoned from kind of the older tactics. So, he was like, he wasn't really privy to the new methods of how we were doing things. So he was kind of like, oh, he didn't know you were ready for this. know our crew was ready for this. So that really helps. So, but yeah, it really goes into that IAP now. So I'm starting to think on everything I do now, like even if it's not wildfire based, it's like your primary, your alternate, and your contingency and your emergency. Like always have that in your head, and not just one plan. Because you basically have one plan. So the pace is one plan, but it's kind of different steps in those plans and knowing when the trigger point hits.
Yeah, 100%. That definitely overlaps into kind of our day-to-day structure stuff, right? It's very easy how that can tie into it. I think going back to just the trigger point discussion, what I was kind of talking about with our truck, like as I see, like we had certain trigger points that all the officers were aware, but my members in the truck didn't really know kind of what it meant. So that was the conversation. I was like, hey, okay, guys, do you know what a trigger point? Yes, this trigger point is this when we change our plan of attack or change our plan. So I said, okay, well, what would you pick for our current, incident action plan? And I'd let them pick, and then we discuss it. And then I said, okay, well, this is where I would pick it, and this is where we have picked it as incident command because of X, Y, Z. And then just to get them learning and slowly trying to figure that out. Even more so going back to the Inconvenience fire when it came down to our end up towards Spirit Ridge, we had all of our sprinkler lines set up and everything. Sprinkler protection was ready to go. So at that point, it was just babysitting, waiting for it to arrive. So once it started coming in, when I was IC on that round, I just told our guys, okay, this is going to be our trigger point when we're gonna fire up the pumps, and then we'll be setting back and we'll have our other engine ready for patrol, and if needed, we'll deal with it as we need to. And it hit that trigger point, and even with that trigger point, I was watching. It's like, man, like there's no wind. It's still going to take a while for it to get to us. So we ended up waiting another 30 minutes before we fired up the pumps. And then once we fired up the pumps, it still took 20 minutes, 25 minutes for the fire to come towards the sprinkler line. And so even with that trigger point, we needed to augment it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the trigger point's good because it doesn't mean that you do anything. The trigger point could just be a reassess. Just let's just reassess. So you hit the trigger point and then carry it on. Yeah.
Sweet. Anything else to really dive into from that course, or?
No, I think so. What's going to happen in April with the engine boss course that Todd was talking about? Grant and I are going to help TFL that course. I think we might just be some staging people, but kind of now we're getting into the whole thing. I think another big point in that course was that the T cards, which for the life of me, I actually thought they meant time cards. And actually, I'm not really sure what they mean, actually, what the T part stands for. But I always thought they were like some kind of weird punch card, like that they know that that's what we were working. But actually, what it is, it's just a big accountability board. So that was something that was like, I was like, oh, I get this now. It definitely makes more sense because it covers the whole entire engine. So like the captain or the engine boss would have his 4 people, the tags of his 4 people with him. So he would know who's on his truck. But realistically, the TFL doesn't need to know who those 4 people are on that truck. He just needs to know where that truck is. And he has the names of the 4 people. So the T card, when they first get there, and now I understand the importance of it because I was kind of like sloughing it off when I go in deployments and we're like, yeah, we'll change the T card when we have time, right? Yeah, when we have time, we'll change. But the T card is actually very important because it's basically our accountability tag. So, you write, your apparatus, all the information on it, and who's with it, the driver, the engine boss, everybody, and then that gets put into like kind of it's kind of looks like a little bit of a command board, and they kind of stick out. Their color coordinates like green or pumpers, and there's all these different colors. And then with a glance, the TFL can be like, okay, I got 2 pumpers, I got 2 tenders, I got a bush truck, and this is who's on my task force. So it's just another method of accountability, but on a kind of a grander scale. And Grant and I were looking at where I think Grant actually ordered some because I want to be able to start using that. So it would have been helpful, like when you guys came to help us, Todd, and then when other departments started rolling in pre BC Wildfire, because BC Wildfire has all this stuff. So when they roll in, they bring the circus with them. So they bring the massive command units and all that stuff, and they have all this stuff. But for us, it would be nice to have, okay, we got Todd's truck here, and then the incident commander could have just sat there and went, okay, we got these guys. This is what resource they brought. We have this department from the north that came down, and I feel that's going to be more how we're going to run things in the future. So we're going to start working on that.
Yeah, that'll be good. I know the T cards. Every time I've looked at that big board of T cards, it was like, wow, okay, there's a lot of fucking cards in the little slots, but I didn't quite understand what it all meant either. I learned a little bit, kind of snooping on that last fire that we're on, but yeah, I really don't have a lot of experience with it.
Yeah, same. My major experience with BC Wildfire is kind of off the jump. Like things haven't really set up yet. Like even like locally, we were doing our own thing. When we went to help OK Falls, like we were there in the first operational period. Willowbrook was coming off the back of the first operational period, and there was so much shit happening throughout the province that like we didn't get a SPS for the first 2 days. So none of that was really rolling out. I think like T cards came out on my last day there, and we got them started to get set up. But I decided, I'm like, well, I'll get these set up, but your manpower is about to change tomorrow, so we're going to have to update this. But it definitely makes a lot more sense. And again, that's why we take these courses. So I think that's really good. We'll probably wrap on that topic now. We'll definitely have a lot to chat about once the course locally here kicks off. We'll get Todd's take on Engine Boss, and Scott can go over doing some of that task force leader in scenario looks like. And what are we sitting here? We're like 45 minutes in. Do you want to touch base on some of your training, Todd, or save it for another night?
Yeah, let's bump it for another night. Because of our dedication to the truck ceremony that we didn't do a whole lot of our ice rescue stuff, and then I missed majority of the ice rescue because I was out doing driver training with some of our guys for our new rescue truck. So I can talk about driving, but it's not very exciting. So let's bump it.
Sweet. Yeah, maybe we'll save training and tactics for next week. We've got our AGM actually next Thursday, so we're not going to have, unless we get some wicked calls from now until then, which actually has been pretty whatever.
Come on, say it.
Quiet.
All right, it's been pretty quiet.
I'll say it.
So unless hey,
because I've been away, I'll say it because I want some calls.
We've definitely tapered off the last week here or two. So I think I handed the keys over to Rob on Thursday, and the pager's only gone off for radio check. So unless something happens, maybe we'll just discuss some of our training tactics, because we've been doing some live fire and searches. You guys have done driver training and ice rescue. So yeah, we should have a lot to chat about. But let's go into some shout outs. Todd, Modus.
Modus, could we talk about them a lot? Big supporter of them. They are of us as well. The Snagger tool is the claim to fame. They have a lot of awesome products between their Snagger, their mini spanners, their wedges, seatbelt cutters, the textiles, the X pouch, their radio straps you're getting into, the gloves, you name it. They're a fantastic company, fantastic product. Canadian out east. So yeah, please go check them out at the Modus website. You can find them online, and DTFF 5 will get you 5% off the order.
Yeah, so I'm watching Scott's computer screen here. I can see over the top of mine. He was actually just on Modus's website. Scott, stop the bleed.
Yeah, so bleeding is bad. Stop it. 3 methods of bleeding control are going to be direct pressure, wound packing, and tourniquet application. If you're going to use a tourniquet, use a good one. Part of the thing I was down for the last month, Todd actually I was teaching some recruits, and one of the things we teach them is stop the bleed. So some recruits in my other line of work. So we teach them stop the bleed, and we kind of throw some of those high fidelity sims at them, culminating with this massive scenario where we have the emergency lights running. Lights are off in this, we call this thing the simulation gym. So it's kind of this big drive-in garage where you can turn the lights off, and we had the blood pumps out, just pumping waters on them, and then they get to do simulation rounds. So rounds are hitting them like basically fast moving paintballs, and then we're just crank the heavy metal. And people are like, why are we cranking heavy metal? It's like, well, it's just that extra like stress of situation. Like it's just, it's not because I enjoy heavy metal, but it's not for any reason that, like, it's not like because we're an action movie. It's just you're cranking this music, and it creates more chaos because you're trying to yell at the subject, and then the subject's yelling at you, and you're trying to yell at your partner to cover while you're trying to put tourniquets on, and just the overall chaos. And one of the things is I hand them a ball and their arm they're shot in, and I said, you have to hold this, and you can manipulate your firearm, and you can manipulate your tourniquet, but you have to hold on to this ball. Just kind of simulates that your hand isn't totally destroyed, but it's like it's kind of in this claw thing now, right? So they kind of have to work through it, and they don't know any of this is happening until it's go time. So we've been kind of building them up, and then finally in the last scenario, it's like just mayhem. There's water all over the floor from the blood, and it's all just water. So when we bring the next crew in, now there's water all over the floor, and the my pre-talk to them is like, oh, we just put this water down as like for part of the simulation because you're working in Vancouver and it's raining, so they're like, oh, okay. Like, oh, that's cool, yeah. We're like, yeah, we're just trying to add some atmospheric conditions, like you're gonna be your pants might be wet because you're gonna be kneeling in water. And they're like, okay, and then literally the lights go off, emergency lights come on, music starts blaring, and then we start spraying with fake blood and yelling at them. So it's really good, and it gets them into that mindset. And it's interesting listening to the octave of their voice go up as they're trying to talk on the radio. And they're just yelling by the end, and we haven't hurt them yet, but we haven't hurt them at all, and they're just like they're freaked. It's actually pretty good, but they all did really well and got the tourniquets on and stopped the bleeding.
Nice. And then you've got what do you got in that cup, Todd?
It's some Wolf Tree coffee made locally here. And no, it's not whiskey. Especially Wolf Tree. Wolf Tree coffee made locally here. Check them out online. Absolutely love them. We were able to partner with them and make a blend called the Initial Attack, which we are very privy to. Every pound sold of the Initial Attack blend, $2 goes to Honor House and Honor Ranch Society, which we are very, very, very big supporters of. So it's become quite popular online. A lot of people are purchasing it, sounds like. And of course, because we made it, we like it. So they got a bunch of swag as well. So wolftreecoffee.com. And they will deliver locally and ship a lot of places. So check them out.
Nice. And then lastly, you got Tanner Olson Band, country music out of West Coast Canada / Nashville. Got some new music coming out. They just released a new song. They're working on a bunch more. Playing a ton of live shows. I saw they were just playing at Tootsie's Bar, which is pretty big in Nashville there, so that's pretty sweet. So check them out. Follow them on social media. Download their music anywhere that you download the music. Really, really good stuff. And then you have us. We're on the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the YouTubes, TikToks. Back to the Stop the Bleed. We've got the entire course. Scott and Todd basically teach through the entire Stop the Bleed course, talking about and showing a lot of those higher fidelity sims. We've got some other training content on there as well as all of our podcasts. So if you want to see us zone out and laugh at each other while we're sitting here doing this, all of our content goes on YouTube as well. So please give us a like, share, subscribe. We thank you for listening in this far. Give us some feedback, send us a message. We did get a couple new ones that for you. Oh, yeah. And then our t-shirt sales are still going on there. We are wrapping that up. We're getting, we definitely have some left, but we're getting towards the end of the stock. So if you're interested, we do have some of all sizes left. DTFF store. Look for that link on our Facebook page and you can grab that. Anything else from you guys?
Nope. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks. Have a good night.
All right. As always, stay safe, stay GTFF.